But I know you have some clips you're going to show us about some things you have. Let's start off with our first one, and you can tell us about it.
In the exhibition, there'll be three-dimensional models that change shape, and there'll be some that don't change shape. But there'll also be a lot of geometries that hopefully stimulate the imagination. And I started off with my images books, which are these geometrical designs. This is one of them. Now these designs, actually, if children look at them, and we're playing that clip. If they look at the designs, they'll see different forms. Whatever form they see in the designs, they can see it again and again and again, repeated, reflected, rotated. So these designs are basically exercises in a sort of visual logic. The more they think about it, the more creative they can be. So it's not really the geometry that you're taught at school. It's a more open-ended geometry. Now, these patterns actually come from a different geometry, a geometry of spheres. So if we could look at that clip, it might be a bit complicated, but it's really spheres changing size in three-dimensional space. So let me show you this model. This model is of spheres in 3D space, which change. Oh, here's the clip, I think, coming up. Is it on?
Yes, we're going.
Okay. This shows spheres changing shape in 3D space. Now, what it generates is new types of three-dimensional structure. So this is a structure that's created through this geometry, just one. And that structure can create forms like this if you connect the centers of the spheres. So this is now another type of 3D form, architectural form.
So explain that to me and for all of us who may not. So you say connect the centers of the spheres, and that can create this.
It does.
Okay.
So in fact, that one creates this one, just by connecting the centers of these guys.
Wow.
And of course, then going back to the exhibition, there'll be geometries of spheres, geometries of simple shapes that change. There'll be this type of geometry, if you can go to the next clip, which looks at the interconnections of spheres as they move one against another.
So what are we seeing here?
So this is circle centers connected, moving over other connected circles.
Oh, that's so weird.
So it creates a sort of an art form.
It almost reminds me of, what are those things that you have to stare at for a really long time to give you a picture? That's almost what that reminded me of. I know that's not what that is, but it's really, it takes you in.
Yeah. So we're going to have high definition animations of things like this. Spheres changing shape, structures that change shape. But we'll also have a lot of stuff on the history of geometry, geometry through time. Yeah,
let's talk about that. So how have geometrics affected the history of cultures?
Well, I've studied geometrical forms culturally through the past, and if you go way back to Neolithic times, they constructed labyrinths. You've heard perhaps the story of the Minotaur in the labyrinth, and the thread that was used to enter the labyrinth. Well, the labyrinth is actually a type of geometry. You can construct a labyrinth by drawing across 4 cup shapes and putting a dot in each cup shape. And then you connect one cup edge to the top of the cross, the dot right across to the next cup edge, and on you go. And that way you'll create a labyrinth. Then, having evolved that sort of geometry in Neolithic times, they then constructed these things underground. And I think used them for tombs. But that's a type of geometry. Of course, then you move into jumping ahead 1,000 years or more. You jump into Greek times, and you've got Pythagoras, and you've got things like the Pythagorean theorem, and then you've got the application of geometry to very magnificent structures like the temples, the big palaces. Well, cathedrals, of course, later, but they're using mathematics too, and geometries. So the systems used from Neolithic times through to the present will also be shown and discussed, hopefully, by any students that are interested. But it's quite a fascinating story.
So there's a big connection between math and art. Would you say that's true? Has that, what are some examples you can give of that connection? You mentioned some through history. Any current day examples?
Well, historically, geometry, the sort of quest of geometry was to find a link between man-made forms like spheres and cubes and nature. And you might have seen the movie The Da Vinci Code. And in that movie there's all this talk about the Fibonacci sequence, which is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. It's numbers added to each other as you go through the sequence. Well, that corresponds with sunflowers and sunflower spirals. And also with the way rabbits breed. So you've got this sort of Fibonacci sequence corresponding with nature, but also with something called the golden rectangle.
Wow.
And that was used by Da Vinci in his portraits and constructing his compositions, which was a proportion, a rectangle. So there you've got a link between geometry and nature, and ultimately sort of mysteries. But if you come forward in time and you look at the newer geometries, then I think you're looking at sort of new types of construction that can be made with new materials like carbon fibers, and you can then start to make your architectural forms look organic, if you wish, because the materials are becoming more flexible. So it sort of gives you a hopefully not too confusing range. But all of this stuff will be sort of there in the Geomorph show. So.
I love how this, not only does it give you a new take on things, but it gives you such a perspective on, you know, the history of this and how deep it is in different cultures and how it can be applied today. So I'm sure students and anyone will thoroughly enjoy this. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Where can people go to find out more information about the exhibit and what you're doing?
I do have a website. It's http:// Burrows Images. ROGERBURROWS images.com.
All right, so perfect. And I know that you can check out the Leonardo site to get more information on Geomorph, the exhibit. So a great place, you know, to take your family, and of course, if you have a class that you want to take over there as well, I'm sure they can fit you in along with all the lectures and workshops happening.
Yeah,
so.
It's such a complicated subject in some respects because there's so much to it, and it's very difficult to make it seem simple. The exhibit will run concurrently with the Da Vinci, the Genius show that's on at the Leonardo. So that really looks at the life of Leonardo da Vinci. They'll have models of some of the structures he invented. So I'll be in good company.
You certainly will. Well, we sure are glad to have you here this morning to explain some of these concepts to us. It's so fascinating. So thank you for your insights on those. We do appreciate that. So be sure to check out the exhibit there at the Leonardo, and also Roger Burrows online. We'll be right back here with more on the Mountain Morning Show.
I find it very, very easy to be true. I find myself alone when each day's through.